Hello, everyone. This is Rob Golfi with REMAX, the Golfi Team. Welcome to the Golfi Real Estate Show with host Stephanie Vivier.
Well, hello, Rob. It's so good to hear your voice. Always great to chat with you. And even though it was only a week ago we last chatted, it's been a kind of a wild week, hasn't it?
It's been crazy with the numbers last month for February versus February 2024. Numbers are way down. Plus, with the talk about tariffs this week, it's just been insane, and it's hard to tell how the impact of everything's going to happen. But let's just go to the stats, and the stats are, I'll tell you, like the unit sales are way down. They're way down, and the market's holding its prices, but the unit sales of homes are way down. So, for instance, in all markets except Fonthill Pelham and West Lincoln, they're up. So let's just look at this. So, in West Lincoln, there was 12 homes sold in the month of February in 2024. There's 13 that sold in 2025. So it's up so stats show that's up 8%. So really, it's only one more they sold, one more of February this year versus last year. So in Fonthill Pelham, they sold 19 homes this year in February 2025. Last year was 15. So that's 27% growth. It sounds like a lot, but it's only four more homes. Everywhere else, the numbers are down. Everywhere else, and very few areas, it shows that the benchmark price is up. For instance, Fonthill Pelham, it jumped quite a bit. There now, and that could help. A lot of higher end homes. The benchmark price is $875,000 in Fonthill Pelham. Fort Erie. It jumped 3% from year over year, 557,000. Grimsby's down in benchmark price 11%. Lincoln is down 4%. Niagara Falls is just, it's hanging in there year over year, 1% down. Niagara Lake. Now, forget about looking at stats in Niagara Lake because it's always an up and down roller coaster, and it shows it's down 24%. But next month it'll just change. Port Colborne, Wainfleet up 8%. Benchmark price. St. Catharines up 1%. Thorold down 5%. Welland up 10% in benchmark price, and West Lincoln up 34%, even though they had 13 sales. Now, if you're looking at the 6-month overview, and it just looks like it's just hovering in most cases. Like, for instance, Niagara Falls, September of last year, benchmark price $615. October $595. November $630. December $637.5. January $647. Boom. February dropped to $600. See how things go? It's just it's a roller coaster up and down, and that's where it's going to hover all the time. It's going to hover like that, and I think we're going to have another year of that. Now, I'm thinking, that things were going to pick up and a little bit, the prices were going to just come up just a tiny bit, but who knows what's going to happen with these tariff situations and all that kind of stuff. But it's gonna change a lot of things, the dynamics. Like we this will be a decade starting from 2020 with COVID-19, I get right. So 2020 to 2020, and we're 2025. So when we get to 2030, it's going to be a decade of a mixed bag of everything. It's going to be the whole, just what's going on in the world. It's just insane what's going on. So so that was St. Catharines. I'm going to go 6 months. September, the benchmark price was $575. October $595. November $559. So it dropped. December $567. And then January, it jumps to $649. and then back down to 590 in February. See how it's going? So you don't know what month to buy, because you know what I mean. You have to figure out what month's hot, what's not. What's another area? Let's say Welland. So Welland starts off in September at 550,000, October 552, November 548, then drops down in December at 570, and then January it jumps to 634,000. And then it drops down to 612. So actually, Welland is actually holding pretty strong with their numbers. But it's the same like that in all areas in the Golden Horseshoe. It's just kind of hovering at a certain number, and it'll do that. Now we don't know, but now we're coming up into a lot of mortgage defaults, and we've got some mortgage defaults that we're selling. So homeowners are facing, and especially with them facing renewals that are coming up, even with the interest rates that are coming down, it's not gonna hit them as hard. So Ontario mortgage delinquency right now, the rate which tracks how many homeowners have not made a payment for at least 90 days, is now at 0.22%, up from 0.12% in the fourth quarter of 2000, I guess 20, this one says 23. I think they made a mistake. If that rate goes up, this young lay tells us that more homeowners are under financial duress, and that household stress and higher delinquencies could spill over into the broader economy. It could further slow the residential real estate market and the rest of the economy. Now, with I could see something like that happening if there is a dramatic amount of homes going up for sale and they need to sell them. And not saying they're giving them away, but they need to get them sold quickly at market price, which they will. But that market price could change if there's an abundance of homes going up for sale. And I know it's tough. It's tough living in Canada. I couldn't believe I was at a function last night, and they were showing how much money you needed to make to afford a house. And they were saying that if you make, I think, was it $90,000 to $100,000, you barely can afford to buy a house now. Now, a teacher, wow, a firefighter, a police officer, I think they make all around the same money, right? I think they're probably at $90,000 that they make. Them by themselves cannot even afford to almost buy a house. Can you believe that?
Yeah, you have to be in some kind of relationship, or people have gotten creative in the past few years. You know, you've heard about like friends buying houses together, brothers, sisters, combinations, those kinds of things. Like the mom and the dad are giving them the down payment, and then they're doing the mortgage together, things like that. It is, really head scratching, because I think when you look at like the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, people talked a lot about, women in the workforce and how this isn't good and we should have, a parent staying home. At that point, it was more so trending toward the women staying home. But this is not possible, because there would be no home for anyone to stay in to raise the kids at this point.
Exactly. One person can't do it. Now, even if somebody wanted to get pregnant, and have a baby, like a couple, and let's say the mother wants to take maternity leave for, a year to 18 months. She goes on maternity leave with unemployment. Now, that unemployment only covers so much. Like, that person's used to making a lot of money. That amount of money that sometimes gets them deep in debt if they can afford to keep the house and have one income coming in. It causes problems. The key thing right here now is, if it is, you got to team up with somebody. You got to fall in love with your girlfriend, boyfriend real fast. Move in together, and hopefully, move in together. Hopefully it works out. If not, then you got a separation on your hands. But the best thing to do is for two people to get together. and see if they can live together. So one, check out each other's bedrooms, like, you know what I mean, like, because that kind of gives you an indication how they are, as long as the parents aren't, the mother's not cleaning the bedroom every single day and making the bed for the kid. So, but check each other's bedrooms, and that'll give you an indication of what kind of life they live, because you're going to have a common area if you're going to have a kitchen. Hopefully there's 2 bathrooms, or buy a house that has an in-law suite downstairs. That's the best way. Like, you know what I mean? And who gets the basement, who gets the upper floor? That's becomes a little bit of an issue. But you know what? You get a guy and a girl. They partner up, even though they're not dating, they're not romantically involved. If you get a guy and a girl, the girl will always want the upper floor. The guy doesn't care. He'll just say, yeah, I'll take the basement. I have no problem with that. And that'd be a great partnership right there. And you start building equity. Now, right now, I think if you're going to buy a house, you got to buy for the long term. You got to buy for minimum 5 years. Don't buy thinking that you're going to move in 1 or 2 years. You have to buy knowing that you're going to hang on to it 5+ years before you actually resell it, because just the way the market's going. And so you got to be very, very, very careful. The ones with the delinquent mortgages, they got to really think fast in what direction they're going. Maybe bring in a boarder to help them pay with the mortgage. Nobody wants a stranger living in the house with them, so hopefully they can find a relative or whatever. But things are changing. Things are changing, and like I said, this is like when I was looking at the stats in the 90s. The market just stayed flat for almost 9 years. And I think we're going to see that, but it's not going to last 9 years. I think it'll be a lot shorter, because our economy is totally different, and we just have to just wait it out and go through it and just be strong and find a way to survive through these times that's happening, especially with the Trump trade war that's happening in Canada, United States.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, Rob, because I think there is a lot of echoes back to COVID. Obviously, we're at the 5-year point now, which is really head scratching. I can't believe 5 years has gone by so quickly. But if you remember, at the beginning of COVID, everyone was sort of paused, right? We're all frozen in our homes and stuff. And I think that that's kind of what's happening with this trade war too, that nobody really knows how to react right now. And it is so volatile and it's changing day to day. But at some point, no matter what happens, we're going to carry on and get on with it, right? Like, life has to continue, and we will figure out a way as a country and as a region here in Niagara to continue to do business, and we'll pivot and we'll find different ways, and we'll break down those intertrade those barriers we have interprovince to do the trade. So, I think we are resilient, and we'll find a way to do it. And so, the housing thing will figure itself out too, right? Like, it's not forever.
No, it's not forever. And I think this is just a big scare tactic, and we're just going to deal with it for the month of maybe 1 or 2 months, and then we're going to be back to everything being back normal. I'm not sure what Trump is looking for, but this is his way of just pushing his weight around as the big guy in the world. The American economy is the biggest and strongest economy in the world. People, they buy tons of consumer goods everywhere. So, but I just think that I just think he's just flexing and trying to make a stance, and then it'll go back to normal. It's just this way of doing this to get something else. I think, we sell energy to them that crosses there, but they're not taxing that as much as everything else. So we can actually say, hey, we're up in our price, and screw you guys, and here it is. So you want to play ball? Here's our deal. So who knows which direction it's going to go, but I don't think it's going to last. I think it's just a scare tactic, but they are causing problems in Hamilton, apparently. So I guess we'll talk about that after the break.
Absolutely, yeah. And when we come back, Rob Golfi is going to let us know how this trade war is affecting Hamilton home builders. And you can imagine that might happen here in Niagara. So stick around for that. If you want to connect with the number one REMAX team in Canada, the Golfi team, give them a call at 905-641-0308 or find them online at robgolfi.com. Rob's sticking around here on the Golfi Real Estate Show. This is News Talk 610 CKTB. And welcome back to the Golfi Real Estate Show. I'm Steph Vivier, and Rob Golfi is our guest today. Rob, I mean, the word on everybody's lips right now is definitely tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. We talked a little bit about them in our first half, but even though we're only a few days into this tariff trade war, things are already starting to happen. And you're going to take us to Hamilton now and discuss how it's affecting the Hamilton home builders.
Yes. So they said a trade war between the United States and Canada will only deepen Hamilton's housing crisis as new homes become more expensive and construction sees delays. Now, the head of the region's Home Builders Association warns. They warn that locally, residents have already been warned that the across the board tariffs could take a $1 billion bite out of Hamilton's economy, with the hurt to be hit residents from all corners of the city. It's crazy that it's going to make that much an effect. And I get it. Like, I don't know how much products that we buy across the border that we import to whatever products we build to build houses, but something is changing definitely. So meanwhile, Cornerstone Association of Realtors recently reported that 388 homes sold in the city in February, a nearly 25% drop from February of 2024, and the lowest for the month of 2010. So provincially, we're having a hard time now as it is. Provincially, it puts goals like Ontario's ambitious target of 1.5 million homes by the end of 2031 even more out of reach, with the housing crisis only getting worse, Collins Williams added. Collins Williams is the president of the Hamilton West Builders Association. I've got to get that right. So now those ripple effects will be far-reaching. Collins Williams added that, pointing to other adjacent jobs such as mortgage brokers, engineers, and architects, job losses have already started. I don't know if that's true or not, but we'll see. He said, but he could not provide any specific numbers for Hamilton. Now, things are slowing down, said Collins Williams. When it comes to the cost of a home, Collins said the reciprocal tariffs will lead to some increases in prices. Now, products such as windows, doors, light fixtures, and appliances such as dishwashers and gas stoves were all included on the list for the first round of the Canadian counter tariffs. Steel and aluminum are planned for the second if the U.S. does not reverse its course. So it is very, very scary out there. So Collins Williams said some other cost escalations could come as Canadian producers with significant export components lose American buyers, leading to supply chains. Those increases are likely not something the local market can stomach, said Collins, noting that the cost of building homes have already skyrocketed before the latest economic disruption. So two things can happen here. If these tariffs happens, the builders will be delayed another probably a couple years before they really can start building at the pace they were years ago, and that'll just drive up the resale market up even more. Or is it going to drive it down? We don't know. Will the government lower interest rates just to offset that? That's hard to tell also. But it is a situation where I know in Hamilton, the main employer is health sciences, but Hamilton does have a lot of steel that they sell to the U.S. Our dollar is very weak compared to the U.S., so it's worth it for them to buy in Canada. So they're gonna get hit just as hard. Like, for them to produce steel in the U.S. and sell it to people in the U.S., their prices are going to go up significantly, and it's going to affect them. And so what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of job losses in one factor, and then a lot of job creation in another. It's hard to tell which direction it's going to go. It's hard to tell what the real estate market's going to go. I don't know if the real estate market will be affected, But I do think that the way the real estate market's going, it's just going to stay on course to be flatlined for the rest of the year. Like it just.
Robbie, I mean, it's not the worst thing, right? I think we got a little bit spoiled maybe from 2020 to 2022 where houses went, completely bananas crazy. So if you have to live somewhere, and if your home doesn't lose value or maybe gains, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, percent, a little bit, that's not a bad thing, right? Like I guess my point is, like, our homes don't always have to be gaining crazy value for them to be a good investment, because over time you do have to live somewhere, and they will, by the time you're, ready to make a change.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? I'll tell you, like, I remember when I bought a house, I was very young. I bought a house in, this was in Grimsby for $120,000. I had it for 5 years, and I sold it for $120,000. Okay. Now that was just the way the market was in the 90s. Now, but the house before that, I bought for $100,000. And 18 months later, I sold it for $145,000. That was a 45% increase. So I made my money on the house before that I bought the other one in Grimsby. So I can't complain. So some people ended up benefiting by selling their house, during COVID for a high number. And then they ended up buying at a high number, but they balanced out. Like they can't say, like, everybody forgets what they made. Everybody always says, "Oh, I lost this. I got to sell my house for a higher number." It's tough. Like I've sold houses where, not many, because I've always hang on to my houses. I don't sell houses, buy them and sell them quickly, because markets can change that way. And it did. Like a lot of people were buying, flipping houses, and they lost, but they made a lot of money, in the 10 years prior to that. So, but then when they lose money on one house, they're crying, and they say, wait a minute, if you calculate all the houses that you bought and renovated and sold and made the profits, you're still way ahead of the game. But they don't see it that way. But I know individual people that are buying, that bought in a high market, and the housing is dropped. I get it. Nobody wants to be there. Just stay there. Unless you have no choice, you're doing a relocation into to a different province or whatever. But just hang on to it. The market will catch up. It always does, and it's like any other market. And it's brick and mortar. You hang on to it, take care of it. That's your investment. So. These tariffs here, it is, I think it's negative news. We're talking about it right now. I'm not even worried about it. I don't watch the news too much. If there's a lot of negative, I turn it, because I don't want it to clog my mind with, bad things. But, I think there will be a little bit of an impact, but I don't think it's going to have too much of an impact on the housing market. I think the interest rates, people renewing their mortgages, will have more of an impact than anything else. And the builders building, I could see there's going to be effect there. So it may take a little longer for them to build houses to hit the goal of the 1.3 million homes that need to be built by 2030. So I don't think that's going to be reached. It wasn't going to be reached even before tariffs started. So let's just put that out there.
All right. So let's leave the tariffs for a bit, because you're right, Rob. I mean, everybody's talking about it. You really can't look in one direction without seeing those two T words together. You got a story for us today about a Burlington property, and a buyer was going to buy it, decided not to, but they're actually being held liable for this. Why did they want to back out?
Yes. And you could tell. So this buyer bought this property, and they, as a result, like, you could tell, because the closing date was sometime in 2022. So they must have bought it at the very height of the market, like in the first quarter of 2022. Now, they kept extending the closing date because for some reason they couldn't close. They were trying to extend it. And eventually the sellers say, well, no, we can't do this anymore. So they put it back on the market and they sold it. Now they ended up getting about $250,000 less for their house from what they sold it to the other guy. Now the other guy is thinking that because he didn't close, that he doesn't like he figures, well, I don't have the money and everything. So, but they sued him, and they won. They got the $250,000 plus $30,000 for costs and everything else. And so you have to be careful. It doesn't matter what the market is. Like if you bought something and you signed a contract, and you're bound to a contract. Now, lawyers try to find mistakes on contracts. Oh, there's initial miss here, initial miss there. But if everything reads like it does, then it is a contract. And I remember my broker years ago, and there's a line there. I think I can't remember how many pages in on the contract. It says the confirmation of acceptance. That's usually signed saying it's accepted by the buyer or the seller. Well, if all the initials have been done, all the initials, so there should be matching initials on every page for all the changes and everything, and you forget to sign that, he told me, he said it's still a binding contract, because even though you don't have the confirmation of acceptance signed, it's still a binding contract. And because he did go through a situation where they went to court and that was missed, but the deal still went through. They had to go through. There was no choice, because all the initials were correct, even though there was one signature missed. So everybody agreed on all the changes, both parties, and so that deal went through. So you got to be careful. You have to be very, very careful. If you're buying that house and the market and everything else with the interest rates, everything that you're buying. Now, if you buy a house and you close 9 months later or a year later, interest rates can change. You're not going to be guaranteed an interest rate. So you got to be very careful. Always try to close within, I think 90 to 120 days, and I think that's what mortgage specialists can guarantee the interest rate for you. So they guarantee that rate. If it goes down, you get the lower rate. If it goes up, you're protected from that interest rate from going higher, and you get the lower interest rate when you're purchasing the house. So, but again, like I said, buy the house. To stay there for 5 years. Now, these people, they knew they were losing money, and that's when they were taking possession of the house, because they bought it in early 2022, and the closing date was later. They knew that they were going to lose $250,000, but the judge didn't care. He said, "Hey, you signed a contract. You're going to have to fulfill." So there was a judgment against them for actually $280,000. The other 30 was for the expenses and everything else. So be careful when you're buying something, because once it's official, getting out of it can cost you more money than you think. So these people could have moved in and just waited out, and that house would have been worth more money down the road. So they ended up losing. And the judge will always, if the contract's good, the contract's good. So you got to make sure you got a good agent that writes the contract in good faith, that knows how to write a contract, so there's no mistakes made, especially if you're the seller and the buyer wants to get out.
Well, that's just the nice thing about right now. You can put some clauses in there, right? Because it's such an emotional decision. I could see, especially this time, being sort of swept up in the emotion of it all, and agreeing to something that, perhaps afterwards, a sober second thought, you didn't want to agree to. So that's where those clauses come in. And of course, you want to check out the house and all of those kinds of things. It just gives people a little bit of time for their logic to catch up with their emotions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? Like I put a clause. I was looking at selling one of my buildings, and I have a clause that says that, hey, if you can't fulfill your conditions by that date, I'm not going to have you tie me up. I'm going to send you your deposit back, and we're done. No signatures needed, nothing. And same thing on closing date. If I have a clause where if you don't close on that day, you can't tie me up. The deposit goes directly to the seller that was selling the property, and that's it. The deal's dead. Forget about it. We're done. And we still can go after them if let's say we have to resell the property and it sells for a lot less than what they originally had it for. And even though they got their deposit back, the sellers got the deposit, they still can go after them for more money.
Is it pretty rare though, Rob, that deals don't go through? Like, what would you say?
Very rare deals don't close. It just, you know what, you can smell a bad deal if you're good. But yeah, it's rare. Only deals that don't close is when the market shifts from like a full 360 degrees, and that happened in early 2022, and as the time went on that year.
Well, that's why you have to have a great agent. How about the #1 REMAX team in Canada, the Golfi Team? You can find them at robgolfi.com. Rob is sticking around here on the Golfi Real Estate Show. We'll be back right after this here on News Talk 610 CKTB. And welcome back to the Golfi Real Estate Show. I'm Steph Vivier. Rob Golfi is with us today, talking all things real estate. Of course, talking tariffs too, because who isn't? Everyone heard it today when they were out at breakfast with all their friends and family, and out and about as you do your chores today. Okay, we were talking a little bit about a property in Burlington just before the break where a buyer got held liable for backing out of the sale. Not quite fraud. Could have been. I don't know. But there is a lot of real estate fraud happening, and you've got some warnings for us today.
Oh, yeah. This was going to be a real estate fraud and tenant fraud. So what happened was we get a call from a buyer that was looking at buying these two listings, one or the other. They were in Fort Erie. Now, there were vacant properties. And so the agent on our team called me up and said, Rob, these guys, before they look at the property, they want to know that they want to buy either one of these houses. So right away, okay, my antennas are going up. So, and this is the great thing about agents that work on my team, because if there's anything that is a little different, they call me, and then the experience kicks in. So these people that were looking at buying either or property that they haven't seen yet, they were vacant, and what they were asking was they wanted to move in prior to the day they would take possession. So they wanted to get this out of the way, and so the agent on my team says, Rob, they want to buy the home and move in within the next 48 hours. Like literally, like this happened like just before the end of February. We're talking like a week ago. This is a true story. This happened a week ago. So, and it was, I think it was like Thursday. I can't remember what the 29th of, or whatever. February goes up to 28 days. Am I correct?
Yeah. And we had the 27th was the election, the Thursday. So the last day was 28th of Friday. So
what happened was, February, I think it was the 26th or the 27th, we get this call. And this guy says he wants to move in and rent for 90 days, but he is going to buy the property. He's going to write an offer to buy the property and close on it in 90 days after that. And so the agent calls me up and says to me, I said, no. I go, this is fraud. I go, this guy is going to commit problems for whoever they're selling to. I go, so one, what we don't do is let anybody move in prior to the closing date. You never want to do that. It's a big no-no. Can you imagine you sell a house and the closing date's in 90 days, and the buyer says, hey, can I move in a month before I take possession? And then he finds out, hey, maybe this place is haunted. Maybe it's got some bad, like who knows? Maybe he finds out he's got bad neighbors. Maybe he finds out that there's a funny smell, maybe barking dogs behind. He could end up living there for a month, say, I am not going to close on this. This house has got problems. You don't want that. They take, whenever the day they take possession, you take it. Do not let them in even 24 hours before, because that could haunt you, and they may say, no way, we're not closing now. So, but anyway, back to the story. So they wanted to move in within 48 hours. But during this time, they only wanted to put a small deposit on these houses were like $850,000 to $900,000. So I told the agent, I go, no way. I go, we're not doing that. And I said, and they wanted to move in within a day and a half. And I said, do they have a truck, like a moving truck with all their furniture in it? They go, yeah. How did you know? And I go, well, that's telling me that these guys probably got a sheriff locked them out of their, locked them out, and they had to get their stuff together and get out. So I said, let me talk to these guys. I wanted to talk to them. Like, now the agent on my team was kind of still being optimistic about these people. And I says, no, I said, look, I go, you can waste your time driving out, showing these houses. But I says, now, I'm involved with this, and I'm involved with this deal, and there's no way that we're going to let these guys move in and prior to closing. And then even if their deposit check, now I would think their deposit check, even if it's a bank draft, I would actually have them go right to the bank with them and make sure they get it right from the bank. Now, so I said to the agent on my team, I said, I want to talk to this guy. So we get a 3-way call, and I forget his name, what it was. And I said, hey, well, like, why do you need this place so quick? And he said, well, I was living with a friend, and we got some, had falling apart, and now we're out. I go, okay. So he said he owned houses before. I said, okay, what other houses that you lived before, right? Because I was going to check the registry to see if he did own these houses, or he's just, and he was getting really defensive and very kind of like didn't like my questions. And I said, look, I want to work with you, but I need to ask these questions because I'm doing this for my client, so I can go to him if you are going to put an offer on one of these houses. That I asked these questions for him. So anyway, he didn't want to answer the question. He just kind of gave me the area, and I said, okay, I knew a little bit. It was a little fraud and everything. And this guy needed to move into a house like right away. This guy had no house right now. He had a truck, a moving truck with furniture, and no house to go to. And this guy wanted a house within 24 hours. So. Anyway, the agent was still optimistic. So I asked the agent I told him, I go, look, get his driver's license. I go, whatever name he told you, I guarantee it's not his full name. Just tell him, okay, listen, you need to get his driver's license and passport. So anyway, he got his driver's license and passport, and just say, because we needed to, just in case we need to do the offer. Mm-hmm. And then he gets the right name, Googles it. Guess what?
Yeah.
Fraud. And see this guy here, he might have fraud some other agent that's not experienced, but right. I'll tell you, somebody is going to get stung by this guy. And so you've got to be careful on things like that, because you do. But the one thing is, we never let anybody move in prior to closing date. That is a big no-no. And the lawyers will say the same thing. Now, if you have an agent says, oh, no problem, they move in a week before, then they would say no problem. I mean, if they do want to do it, my recommendation is no. And same thing with lawyers. They'll not recommend it, because that's a way out of a deal. And then now you got to go chase them and sue them. And who knows if they have an address to be sued for. So that is a funny story that was in Fort Erie, and it's not going to happen to us or any of our clients because of the fact that we knew right away. Now, we always Google people, check them out, all buyers, especially when we get a contract, a purchase and sale agreement, and we talk to our clients, we try to find out who it is. And same thing with tenants. We want to know, their story. Tenants, sometimes, you don't want to get a bad tenant on your hands. And most bad tenants, there's a registry now that you can check to see if there's claims against them. They hate it. We had one that did have a claim against them and said, sorry, we can't rent this house to you. And they go, oh, no. And he wanted to tell us the story. I go, look, the story tells us that you didn't pay your rent, and the landlord had to take you to court, and you still didn't want to pay. And so now you're, we don't want to face that. So, and
wow. So what would he be doing, Rob? Moving in and then just not paying rent? Because once he's in there, it would be hard to get him out, right?
Oh, absolutely. He knows he's got a year free, basically. He's going to move in, pay his first and last month's rent, or whatever, 2-3 months rent. I'm not sure how he wanted a small deposit. He wasn't going to close on that deal. That guy, whatever money he was giving that day to make this thing happen, was that last money he was going to give, guaranteed. There was no more money. And I wasn't going to trust even his bank draft. Some bank drafts, you have to be careful. Banks do get bad bank drafts. And that's why sometimes they put holds on it. So you think you have a bank draft, right? Like you go to the bank, you give, and then you give it to somebody, or let's say you get a bank draft. Let's say you sold your car, right? You get $20,000 bank draft for your car, and you go to your bank and deposit. You think it's cash. It isn't. They put a hold on it. They put a hold on it, and to make sure that it clears, because if that bank draft is fake, then you're out of luck on that 20,000, and then the bank would have been out of luck if they okayed it. So you have to be very, very careful. They have to know who you are. They have to know the other person, if regarding the bank drafts. And sometimes they'll call the bank, say, hey, did you do a bank draft for this person? Because we're depositing it into our account. And if it's true, they say, yes, we did, then it'll clear. But if the bank says, no, I don't recognize it, or I don't see it in our system, well, they'll let it sit for 4 days, 5 days, and then see if it clears. But so even bank drafts, you got to be careful. So you got to watch, even when you sell something to somebody and online, you got to go right to the bank, right there on the spot with them, and get that check right from them at the bank. So they did the bank draft at the bank, not some printing machine that they have in their basement that's got a high-end printing machine. So you got to be very, very careful. A lot of fraud out there.
There is, a lot to look out for. So we always appreciate you bringing that stuff to us, Rob.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about resale. So maybe someone isn't looking to sell this year. They've been listening to us, so they think, oh, we don't know, the house isn't going to increase that much. Let me get ready for next year. Let me do some basement renovations. Let me do a kitchen. Let me do a bathroom. Where do we get that good value, Robin? Where are we kind of throwing our money away?
So you got to be very careful. Now, if you do a renovation, you're doing it for yourself, because you don't get the full return value on it. So you have to be very careful. And I know sometimes they put, like, I remember years ago, an addition would cost you $150,000. Now an addition on the house, it can cost you up to $250,000. It's a lot of money. So you got to be careful. You're not putting such a big addition on a house, and the neighborhood doesn't warrant that. So let's say you got a house that's worth $700,000 and you put $250,000 in an addition on it. That addition, you better hope that you're going to be there for at least another 5 to 10 years so it catches up to it. It does add value, but not $250,000 value. You're not going to be able to sell a house in a neighborhood that all the houses are going for $750,000 and that one's $1 million. It becomes tough. You'll be able to be the most expensive house. You will sell it for more money than what everybody else is, but you won't get your 100% of your money back. So you got to be very, very careful when you're doing renovation. So a lot of times, people ask us, Rob, should I finish the basement to sell the house? And I say to them, no. I go, because you're not going to get the full return. I said, just give it a good cleanup, maybe, the walls and stuff, but don't go crazy in doing it, because you're not going to get the return immediately. You will get the return down the road, but not immediately. Bathrooms and kitchens, you do well on it, but there is 60 to 80% return. And so, like, if you're going to spend $20,000 on a kitchen, you might get, like, like 15 to $18,000, dollars back on it. So you got to be very careful, very careful. So I tell a lot of people, the best return if you're doing resale right now is paint and sometimes flooring. Be very careful. Paint and flooring, it cleans things up so nicely. You'd be amazed. You could have a house that didn't look very nice, but a paint job really does make a difference. But once you start putting heavy dollars into the house, you could end up losing money. So you got to be very, very careful with that. And I find a lot of people that, with estate sales, kids, they say, hey, what if we put money into this, will we get more money? And they're always thinking, okay, now they're inheriting all this money. They want to get more money. Be very careful. Be very careful. Paint jobs, they do the stuff. Curb appeal, give it a good cleanup, and you'll do great. And if you have to put some flooring in, put some good quality flooring in. Don't cheap out, because people see that, and you got to be very careful. So be careful on putting an addition on to a house in a neighborhood that doesn't warrant that expense. You might as well just move to another house, a bigger house if you need to. It'll be cheaper that way.
Great advice there. When it comes to paint, Rob, do the white, what do you think? Like just keep it really, really simple?
Yeah, light colors, very light colors all the time. Very light, white, off-white, eggshell white. Just and it just feels cleaner and looks better and brighter when you walk in.
Okay, great tips, great show as always. If you want to call the #1 REMAX team in Canada, that's the Golfi team. They're available for you right now at 905-641-0308. You can find them online at robgolfi.com. Rob Golfi, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. You've been listening to the Golfi Real Estate Show on News Talk 610 CKTB.